right, we are recording. Donald F. Glut, welcome to the Fishbowl.
Oh, well, glad to be here.
We're glad to have you. First off, let me just say that I am, of course, a huge fan of your work and have definitely been following your career for a long time.
Thanks for pronouncing my name correctly.
Well, I had a little assistance with that, and that is I have to give credit to my screenwriting teacher, Steve Cuden, for that.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you remember Steve, but he's teaching at Point Park University right now, where I'm in my senior year studying screenwriting. And when I mentioned to him that I was going to be interviewing you, he said he may or may not remember me, but you can mention my name to him. So
where's you calling from?
Pittsburgh.
Oh, Pittsburgh. Okay. I was at Pittsburgh a few times in my life.
It's a great city. I love it. Although I'm looking to get out into the LA area pretty soon myself. So
well, if you want to be a screenwriter, this is where you should really be.
Yeah.
Writing scripts is going in for meetings and networking and all that sort of thing. It's very difficult when you're out of state or even out of town.
Right. That's part of what the Fishbowl's about is getting various different people of all aspects of the entertainment industry to tell a little bit about their experiences and what kind of got them into film and their love for film in general. So I guess we can start with the first question, which is just that. I know that you've written and directed a lot of films from a very young age, a lot of them being comic book adaptations, and I was just wondering what got you into film in general to kind of get you where you are now.
It's a kind of a long and strange, in some ways convoluted story. It really started when my mother started dating my father. My father was a baker then, and somebody in the bakers union or somebody he worked with owed him some money, and he didn't have the money to pay him back, so he gave him as sort of a consolation prize a 16-millimeter Keystone movie projector and a couple of little films that went with it. My mother, for their first Christmas present, my mother was working in a place in Chicago. They were both in Chicago. My mother was working in a place where, in the same building, there was you could buy things at discount if you knew the people that worked there. So she went down there and she thought, well, it's nice that since he has a movie projector, maybe it'd be nice to have a camera go with it. So she bought him, at discount, a Keystone 16-millimeter movie camera. And now, when I was about 9 years old, I saw a movie, the Ray Harryhausen movie, The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. This is 1953. And I loved dinosaurs as a kid. I still do. And I wanted to be able to show that movie in my house anytime I wanted to. But in those days, there were no VHS recorders. There was no DVDs, no Blu-ray. Even Castle Films wasn't putting out monster movies and horror films, science fiction movies. They were putting out westerns and cartoons and newsreels and jungle, true life adventures and that kind of stuff. So I figured we had a movie camera, we had a movie projector. The only way I was going to be able to do that, show a movie with a dinosaur in it, anytime I wanted to in my house on our home screen, was if I made it myself. And so I shot my first movie when I was 9 years old in the backyard with a dinosaur in it, and that's where it all began. And the bug sort of hit me, and then I would go to the movies and see Dracula films and Frankenstein movies and Wolfman movies and things like that, and you couldn't get them, so I had to make them myself. So it didn't start out as a desire to make movies. It started out as a desire to show movies that you couldn't buy. And so the more I got into it, the more I realized that that's really what I wanted to do. And so that's where the amateur movies began. And then when I moved out here to California, when I graduated from high school, my mother asked me, what would you like for a graduation present, for high school graduation present? I said, well, I'd like to go to California and meet some of these people that I've been corresponding with, like Ron Haydock and Forrest Ackerman and these people. And they were running photos from my amateur movies in their magazines. Famous Monsters of Filmland, Fantastic Monsters. Castle of Frankenstein was running those movies, running photos from those movies. And then when I came out here for a vacation to Los Angeles, I wrote to Forey and I said, hey, I'm going to be bringing some of my amateur movies out. Could I show them at your house? And he said, sure. And he said he would try to get Bird-Eye Gordon to come to the screening at his house. Bird-Eye Gordon was making all those movies like Amazing Colossal Man and Attack of the Puppet People. He just made The Magic Sword. So that was a big deal for me. I was going to meet this real movie director, movie producer, and I got to show him my movies. So anyway, we went out to California and went over to Forey's house with a whole suitcase full of these amateur 16mm films. They weighed a lot. I mean, they were all in metal cans and 16mm.
Right.
A lot bigger than 8mm. And so Forey did not have a projector. There was a guy there named Ray Craig, and Ray brought the movie projector over. Now, two things happened that were very important at that get-together. First of all, Bird-Eye Gordon really was very supportive. He didn't say, hey, hey, kid, your stuff is awful. Why don't you get a job in a shoe store or something like that? He was very supportive. He's really, really very interesting, very creative, very imaginative. And he actually asked me how I did one of the special effects. And so that was kind of a thrill for me, that Bird-Eye Gordon was asking me how I did something. And then the other thing was, Ray Craig had brought the projector, a 16mm projector. And I started talking to Ray. In fact, Ray is a friend of mine to this very day. I've seen him several times a year when I go to Las Vegas, where he lives now. And I said, is this your projector? And he said, it was a nice Golden Hour projector. He said, no, I borrowed this from USC Film School where I'm a student. I said, wait, hold it. You borrowed this from where? It's called, I'm in the cinema department at USC. And I said, well, you're telling me that you can go to school and learn how to make movies, and your homework is making movies? He said, yeah. So he took me over to USC campus, and he showed me all the stuff, all the rooms, and he described what they did there. And I told my mother, when I got back to the hotel where she was waiting for me to come back, I said, I don't know what it takes. And at that point, I'd already enrolled in DePaul University in Chicago. I said, I don't know what it takes, but here's the plan. I'm going to go 2 years at DePaul, get all my subjects out of the way, and then my requirements out of the way, and then I want to transfer to USC. And she looked at me like I guess I was crazy. So when I got back to Chicago, we sent a letter to USC Film School, and they accepted me. So that's how I moved to California, made the move. And then for many years, I got kind of sidetracked. I was liked by the students, but I wasn't liked by the faculty. You see, I got in a lot of trouble at USC because the films I was making, the student films I was making, had characters like Superman and Captain America, and
right,
the Sun Demon, characters like that. And in those days, if you went to USC Film School, they pretty much told you weren't going to get into business. It was a closed shop. And the best you could hope for maybe would be working as a projectionist in the theater somewhere or working in a camera shop. So anyway, I got in a lot of trouble at USC because the movies that I was showing people like George Lucas, I was going to get thrown out for. They were going to expel me from the department, not because of my abilities, but because of my taste. I remember one of my teachers once telling me that they had a meeting that they were thinking of ousting me from the department because, quote, I like to read comic books, unquote. And then I made the Superman film for one of my classes, and I had to take the class over. And I said, well, why do I have to take this class over? My film was better than most of the other films that the other students had done in this class. And he kind of wagged his finger at me. He said, because you made a Superman movie. So it had nothing to do with my abilities as a filmmaker. It was because it was a Superman movie. So anyway, of course, now everything has changed at USC. But that's how it was in those days. So I got very bitter about movie making. And as soon as I got out of school, I answered an ad on the Musicians Union bulletin board for a bass player, and I ended up in a rock band that was produced by Michael Nesmith, who's one of the Monkees. And I did that for a few years. And then from there, when that kind of fizzled out, I ended up writing books and comic books. And then when I spent a number of years working for the different comic book companies, and then when that collapsed, when pretty much the entire West Coast bullpen got canned from Marvel Comics, we all took the next logical step, which was going to animation, because all the animation studios were out here, and we could think visually and think fast, so we were perfect for animation. And the thing is about animation, when you write a script, it's different than writing a script for a live-action movie or a TV show, because for a live-action show, you're writing master scenes that the director then goes in and breaks down and shoots the way he wants. In an animation script, you're literally directing on paper. You have every cut indicated in the script, every camera movement, et cetera, et cetera. So a script that would normally be maybe 30 pages long could be as much as 65 pages long because you're directing it on paper. That's how I learned how to direct, even more so than things I learned at USC Film School. And then I was involved in, I did several albums, music albums, with a friend of mine named Pete Von Schally called Dinosaur Tracks. And a producer friend of mine said, I'd like to take that music and make music videos out of it. And you can write the script. And I said, well, that's fine. So I wrote the script for the first 6 songs. And then the director, the guy who was going to direct it, flaked out. And he kind of disappeared. And so the producer said, well, I have to pull the plug on this project. And I said, wait a minute, hold it. Why? I mean, I put all this work into it. The music is there. All we need is a director. I said, give me a shot at it. Let me try this. And if I screw up, you can say, okay, we're not going to do it. But if it's good, we'll have something, and I'll do it for free. So he let me. He said he agreed to that, and I found out that directing for me was very easy. It was mostly instinctive. To me, it was just making logical and creative decisions based on how much time you have and how much money is in the project and on the geography of the sets and your location. So that led to me having an association with this producer. And then one day he called me. He said, "Look, I got a possible deal with the Playboy Channel. You want to direct a movie?" And I said, "Sure." And that was Dinosaur Valley Girls. And one thing just kind of led to another. So that's where I am today. I mean, it started out because somebody owed my father some money, and my mother bought him a movie projector for a Christmas present.
Very cool.
It's funny too, it's funny how these things work out. If these serendipitous things, for instance, like if this guy had paid my dad back, he never would have had the movie projector. If when I was in California on that vacation, if Forrest Ackerman had a projector and I never met Ray Craig, I might never have found out about USC Film School until it was too late. If Burt Gordon had blown me off and said, hey, this stuff is really amateurish, or, give up, don't even try, I would have been so shattered by that, I probably never would have made another amateur film. So it's funny how these things just sort of happen, and these things have happened to me all the time. A friend of mine named Jim Harmon used to say that I had infernal luck, but I think luck is simply good or bad, taking advantage of or not taking advantage of a situation that sort of comes your way by accident. And so anyway, that's how it all started, and that's kind of where it ended up.
Stuff of legend, and I can absolutely relate with what you just said, because it's interesting because when I graduated high school, I said to my mom, for my graduation present, I want to go to this Chicago Fangoria Weekend of Horrors.
Uh,
And she was like, she didn't know anything about that. The only reason she knows anything about any of the horror movie people, or really anything that I talk about with movies, is because I talk about it all the time.
oh,
And because of that, when I went to the Weekend of Horrors way back, going on almost 10 years now, it changed my life. I got to meet Robert Kurtzman. I got to meet Doug Bradley. I got to meet Bill Moseley. It was like, it was an insane, enjoyable time for me. And it made me say to myself that this is what I know. I don't know what I want to do in this industry yet, but I want to work in the film industry. And from there, I kind of, for a while, wanted to do special makeup effects, and I was thinking of going to Tom Savini's makeup effects school here in Pittsburgh. Then I switched over to technical theater, and I actually did that for about 2-3 years at a community college here in Pittsburgh, and got my associate's degree. But then I was like, you know, I love movies. I'll admit I am not that much of a fan of plays. There's just something, it's not like, I'm saying plays are bad or anything, but, there's just something about movies that, have a different element than theatrical plays do. And from there, I said, I think I want to try screenwriting, and I actually paid $350 out of pocket to take an intro to screenwriting course at Pittsburgh Filmmakers. I got an A- in the course, and I said, this is what I want to do. And I'm now in my senior year at Point Park University here in Pittsburgh. I'm actually have written several feature-length scripts, a few short scripts, and one thing that I guess can lead into the next question is I'm actually in the process of developing a cartoon series myself, and I was wondering, not just for myself, but for my listeners and people who, want to try and like get into animation and make cartoon series and stuff like that. If you had any advice for people like me and my listeners.
So the most important thing is two things. One is something I've already said, and that's to move out here. It's almost impossible to get into animation at studios, the professional animation, living somewhere other than California, because you're constantly going for meetings, and so much of the work is not. It's cronyism. It's the old N-word, nepotism. It's not so much what you know. It's not who you know. It's who knows you. And the way you get people to know who you are, they got to like you before they read your script in many cases. You have to network. You have to get out. And this town is full of places you can meet professionals. Screenings, parties, conventions, whatever. And that's what this town is all about in Los Angeles. It's about movies and television. And story editors. I'm working on a show right now. I can't disclose what it is. It's not Saturday morning because there are no Saturday morning shows anymore.
Right.
But the story editors have been a friend of mine for 30 years or more. And he called me and said, I'm doing a new show. I'm bringing all my friends. That's the way it works. I've been on animation shows back in the glory days when, Hanna-Barbera and Filmation were doing all these Saturday morning cartoon shows. And you could write, a dozen or more episodes of a show, and it could all be highly rated. The next year, a new story editor comes in, and he brings all his friends in, and all the people that worked the first season are gone. I mean, they're looking, and I'll tell you, there's ageism. This is extremely important. Something Hollywood doesn't want to talk about. But once you reach about 35 years old, forget it. You're not going to get in the studios. They want young people constantly. And unless you're somebody really special, once you reach about that age, you're not going to stay in the business. You're going to be replaced. And that's just a sad fact of life. They want young people, young, attractive people. So the way you look has a lot to do with it. Roy Thomas, when I was working at Marvel Comics, once told me something that had a profound impact on me because I apply it to a lot of other things. He said, a comic book cover will sell that issue. The contents will sell the next issue. And I stopped to think, my friends who were like people you wouldn't necessarily figure had to look their best. The ones that were successful, though, they were all the ones who looked their best. They dressed nicely. They didn't look weird. They didn't come off as strange or anything like that. They weren't grossly overweight. This kind of thing. When you walk in their office to a story editor or a producer who's going to buy your stuff, you are judged from the moment you step in that office. And if they like you, you're more likely to get a fair reading of your material. If they feel weird about you, or if they don't like you from the beginning, or if you rub them the wrong way, they're probably not going to give you the best, fairest look at your stuff. So, so much of it has to do with the way you present yourself. And it's so important to meet people that trust you and like you and know you, because they're the ones that are most likely to give you the job.
The true words of wisdom right there. I am taking that to heart, and it's a lot of what my teacher Steve Cuden has keeps reiterating from my first class with him up until now, and actually more so now than ever, because most of the students that are in the classes that I have with him are either juniors or seniors, and it's the truth. I mean, Hollywood it's a whole different ballgame. But, I feel like for people like myself and hopefully my listeners and just people in general that want to work in movies, I feel like if you're passionate enough, if you really know your stuff and, feel confident with your work and yourself, I feel like you have a better capability of making it out there. And, I'm excited to graduate in May and get my tuchus out to Los Angeles to start, doing what you've been doing, what everyone who I've been talking to on my podcast has been doing. And it's just, movies is where it's at.
Mm. And another thing, too, is and this is so important, you're going to get a lot of rejection up front. I mean, when I started out as a writer, almost everything I wrote got rejected. And I saved a lot of rejections. But you've got to let it roll off your back. You cannot take it personally. Because in many cases, sure, a lot of times you get rejected because your work isn't very good, or it's amateurish, or it's whatever. But a lot of times you get rejected for different reasons. I'll give you a couple of examples. I've made a number of movies now, and when the actors come in, there was one actress who came in, and she looked almost exactly like an actress who'd already hired for a leading part. And if I hired her, there would be visual confusion. Sometimes, if your leading man, if your leading lady has red hair, you're not going to hire a leading man who has red hair. You're not. What if unless you're Tom Cruise or somebody, if you're way shorter than the actress you're playing against, you're probably not going to get the role. But there are other strange things. psychological things. I was told years ago, and I've made a practice of this, if you're sending in a manuscript or something to be read, rather than bringing it in person, you're mailing it in or sending it in, try to send it in so the person reading it gets it on a Tuesday or a Thursday. Now, why is that? Because if they get it on a Friday, possibly they're thinking of going off at the weekend or something. And they're not going to give you your work if they're reading because they're thinking of going home or going on their vacation or whatever they're going to do. If it comes in on a Monday, well, things have piled up all week. And, I'll give you a perfect example. Years ago, back in 1973, I was in New York. And I went there because I was trying to get more work in the comic book business. A friend of mine had a party. He was a comic book writer for Marvel Comics. And everybody there at this party was either an artist or a writer or an editor. So I said, well, I'm going to be at that party. And so I went there and I struck up a conversation with Denny O'Neil, who was then editing a bunch of books at DC Comics. And Denny and I hit it off right off the bat. And he said, this was on a Saturday night. He said, why don't you come in on Monday and I'll see some of your work. So I went over to DC Comics. I got there early in the morning and Denny had just shown up. And we went to his office. And on his desk was a stack of manila envelopes about a foot high. And he said to me, you know what those are? I said, yeah, those are probably script submissions. He said, that's exactly what they are. He said, there could be a masterpiece in there. But I don't have time to read all that stuff. And he didn't even open them. He gave them to his secretary to send back. Then he said to me, what did you bring me? And I handed him the script and he bought it. I mean, that's the psychology. And sometimes, even weirder things can happen. You can walk into an office and meet a story editor, and the person takes a dislike to you because you happen to look like somebody he had maybe his girlfriend or boyfriend or something that he had a fight with the night before, and you remind him of that person. And so there's friction right there before he even reads your stuff, and maybe he won't read your stuff because of that. But just these strange little things. So in other words, what I'm saying is, you get a lot of rejection for reasons that have nothing to do with your work, the quality of your work, or your value as a human being, or anything like that. And you've got to let those things roll off your back. You can't take them personally. And the other thing is, you can't give up. The pendulum's going to swing both ways. Sometimes you're going to go through, especially when you're starting out, go through periods of just abject poverty. And what separates the men from the boys is the ones who don't give up. The people that, I've seen people that go to the American film market with a film and they can't sell the film. It's their first film. Or they get cheated by a distributor, which happens more often than not, especially the beginners. And they get so shattered by that they never make another film. Or I've known writers who sent their manuscript out for a novel and it comes back rejected. And they get so, they put the manuscript in the desk drawer and never send it out again, and that's the end of their career. Or they wait for the phone to ring. They sit around waiting for the phone to ring, and somebody to offer them. But you got to get out there and hustle. You got to get out there and meet people, network, get people to know who you are, get people to like you. That's what it's all about, and that's really what separates the people that are successful from the ones who just fall by the wayside.
Absolutely well put. And that's great information for myself and as well as my listeners and anybody who is thinking about getting into the industry, whether it's, screenwriting, acting, directing. I mean, it goes with every aspect of what is the film industry. And I know for a fact I'm one of those people that, loves movies and film so much that I know for a fact no matter how tough things get, while I'm still trying to work my way in, there's just something about being out there and working in it and just doing whatever it may be that's, at least to me, fulfilling, and I think that's, with people like me and people that have a true love for film, whether it be screenwriting or any other aspects, my advice to my listeners and kind of what you just said is to just stick with it. And if you really love it, it's not always going to be fun, but you will work your way up to the point where it becomes just pure fun. And
It is fun.
I'm, yeah,
Playing and getting paid for it.
right.
Which brings up one other really important thing. Now, I grew up in Chicago, which is in some ways like Pittsburgh, a big, urban city. I was a street kid, and almost, I had a lot of talented people in my family. Okay, who had music abilities, art abilities, acting abilities, whatever. I was the only one who pursued it because none of them, there was something about that city that stifles creativity in people. I mean, most of the people I know in Chicago, all they really care about is, like the Cubs ballpark and their families, the Cubs baseball team and their families. If they had any kind of abilities at all like that, they didn't treat them as a potential business or profession, which it is. It's a business. They treated it as a hobby. So let's say they were, I had a cousin or something who was a good artist, get to be about 18 years old, then he'd put that on the back burner and get a job in a factory or something. And they just never understood that you can make a living off of that doing something you really love to do. Most people in the world, I would guess, don't really love their work. To me, the most depressing, the only, downside, of course, when you're not working. But to me, it's a difference in having a job where you can't wait until it's over so you can go on your vacation or take off at the weekend, and having a job where you can't wait until it starts. To me, the sad part is when the job ends, not when it begins. And because I love the work process so much. And so many of my friends and relatives from that city just gave up because they looked at it as a hobby. And they never realized you could make a living. You make a livelihood doing something you really are passionate about. And so you can't treat it as a hobby. You can't treat it as a sideline. It's got to be your main focus. And those are the ones that succeed.
Exactly. And I like to think I'm one of those people that has what it takes to get out there and make their mark, if you will. And I just I'd like to just thank you again for coming on the Fishbowl and doing an interview. It's been great having Donald F. Glut on the show. I have one last question that we can, I guess, close out the interview with, and it's kind of like my closer question for everyone I interview, and that is, what are some of your favorite movies, whether it be horror, sci-fi, drama, just what are some of your favorite films in general?
Oh, well, my favorite movie, I think, of all, it's a tie between two. And neither of them are horror films. One is Red River, with a Western with John Wayne. And the other is the entire Godfather saga, which I think is, including the third one, which nobody else seems to like. I love all three of them.
I like the third one. My only complaint with the third one is Coppola having his daughter in it. That's my only complaint.
Yeah. About every 3 years, I watch all three of them, one per night in a row, in 3 consecutive nights. Horror films, of course, the original King Kong,
Classic.
Frankenstein, all the usual ones. All the classic stuff, Island of Lost Souls, House of Wax, yada yada. I'm not really crazy about all the slasher films and the torture porn and all that kind of stuff. I like the old classic monsters and that kind of thing. I love a lot of the movies that were made in the 50s, like 12 Angry Men and On the Waterfront. Um, so I like a variety of things. I don't like musicals. The
You
only
and me
two
both.
musicals I like Hard Day's Night and Jailhouse Rock. Those are about as close as I get to musicals.
For me,
Uh,
it's Rocky Horror and Little Shop of Horrors.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And which one? The remake or the musical version? Yeah. So I don't like. You know, I love the Three Stooges. I don't particularly find the Marx Brothers funny, but you know a lot of people do. So I like a lot of different types of things. I like movies about. I like prison movies. I like film noir. I have no interest in sports, but I love movies about boxing for some crazy reason. You know,
I'm the same way. A few years ago, they shot a grudge match actually here in Pittsburgh with Stallone and De Niro, and I'm a huge Schwarzenegger Stallone fan. However, the only Stallone movies I really can't stand are the Rocky movies. But there's just something about grudge match that besides the fact of I obviously had to give it a watch because it was filmed in Pittsburgh, but I love the fact that it was written by a Pittsburgher, and it was taking the idea of these two old boxers who was obviously inspired by Rocky and De Niro's character in Raging Bull. And what if we took like these two, iconic boxing movie characters from the 80s and put them into like a situation in present day? And there's just something about it that I thought was hysterical, and I loved it. Um, and I'm a huge fan of film noir as well. I actually have to do a presentation on it at the end of this semester, and it actually is funny because for senior thesis this semester, well, this year, I'm writing a film noir horror film.
oh great! So am I. I actually we're going to be shooting it fairly soon. I have a book collection called Tales of Frankenstein. It's got approximately 25 short stories by me in it, and I'm taking 5 of those stories, and we've already shot one, it's called, the movie was called Tales of Frankenstein, and one of them is a film noir, but kind of a takeoff. It's going to have, it starts out in color, and then we're going to pull the color out as you walk. There's this private eye is walking to this old house, and the color will either go to black and white or real muted color, so it kind of suggests black and white. But it's got the voiceover narration, it's got flashback, it's just like a film noir thing. And so I'm looking forward to that.
Very, very cool. If you could maybe give us, if you can, a little insight on any possibly other upcoming projects.
Well, I've got a lot of things. Most people my age are out of work and in rest homes and things. I'm more busy now than I've ever been in my life at one time. I've got, first of all, I got a new novel coming out called Frankenstein, The Final Horror. That'll be coming out in a few months. But I'm in post-production on a female werewolf movie. I started shooting the Frankenstein movie. I've been hired by a Japanese film company to write a top-secret animation feature-length movie. I'm working on a Middle Eastern Saturday morning cartoon series with a Jewish producer. That I don't know what kind of thing that, but and I'm also writing some comics again. I haven't done that in many years. There's a magazine called The Creeps, which is kind of an imitation of Creepy and Eerie and Vampirella. I mean, it's very, very close. And they wanted to get as many of those original artists and writers involved in it as possible. So I just sold my first 2 comic book stories of that type. And last one I did was like in 1973 or 74. So it's been a long time since I've written that kind of a comic book story. But I just sold 2 of them. They liked them. I'm probably going to be doing a lot more. So I'm busier now than I've ever been, and been going to a lot of conventions too. I'm getting invited to a lot of conventions, and working on a website. I mean, I'm busy all the time. It's good to be busy. I'm glad, and so that's what I'm doing right now. That's what's on the plate right now. Who knows what's going to happen tomorrow?
Excellent, excellent stuff. Well, I'd like to just thank you again for coming on the show. It's been great having you. Um,
Well, I hope I didn't talk too much, guys.
no. I like to have my interviews go about like an hour max, and we're actually at like a little over 40 minutes here, so that's perfect. Um, Donald F. Glut, thank you again for coming on the show.
Okay.